Chapter 1. He was left with a baby in his arms, and no answers. The night was quiet, unusually so. Carter's apartment overlooked a dim alley in a worn-out part of town, where the silence usually came only after the chaos had tired itself out. But that night, silence came with a knock on the door. It was the kind of knock that doesn't wait for a welcome. Hurried, hard, desperate. When Carter opened the door, he wasn't expecting to find a baby carrier at his feet. Inside it, a baby, barely a few months old, wrapped in a hospital blanket, cheeks red and wet from crying. His eyes were wide open, terrified, and on the carrier's handle, taped in panic, was a folded piece of paper with only 3 words written in shaky ink. "Take care of him." Carter blinked. He stepped into the hallway, looking left, then right, but no one was there. The staircase echoed with stillness. No footsteps, no car starting, nothing. He bent down slowly, his hands trembling, and picked up the carrier. The baby stopped crying for a moment, as if recognizing something in him. That was the first time Carter held Aiden, and from that moment on, his life stopped being his. He didn't call the police. He didn't think. He just brought the baby inside, sat on the worn-out couch, and stared at him under the buzzing light of the kitchen. The child's little hand curled around his finger, and something inside Carter broke, or maybe healed. He wasn't sure. The note didn't say who the baby was, but Carter knew. Deep down, he always had a feeling that his younger brother, Dean, was hiding something. Dean had disappeared months earlier, left town after a fight with Carter that had never fully healed. They hadn't spoken since, and now, this. Carter searched the baby's blanket for more clues. He found a hospital tag. Aiden, it read. Born 6:45 a.m., May 3rd. No last name, no mother's name. Carter sat in the dark for hours. Aiden, asleep on his chest, his heart thudding with questions. Why Dean? Why him? Who was the mother? Why would Dean leave his child like this and expect Carter to take over? But none of it mattered. Not really. What mattered was that the baby needed someone. And in that moment, Carter became that someone. Without promises, without knowing what came next, he chose to stay. He called off work the next day. He walked into a baby supply store, clueless, sleep-deprived, and holding a crying infant. He left with formula, diapers, bottles, and the number of a parenting support group. The first nights were brutal. He didn't know how to soothe Aiden's cries, how to sterilize bottles, how to understand the difference between hungry and tired. But slowly, he learned. And even in the chaos, Carter felt something shift. A bond building not through biology, but through every sleepless night and desperate lullaby. His friends told him he was crazy, that he should have gone to the police, that it wasn't his responsibility. But Carter didn't care. That child had been left on his doorstep. And even if Dean never came back, even if no one claimed Aiden, Carter wasn't going to abandon him too. By the end of that first month, the apartment was unrecognizable. Toys filled the living room. Baby monitors hummed through the night. Carter's old life, late nights, casual dating, long hours at work, had vanished. In its place was a world built around feeding schedules, bath time, and storybooks. But Carter didn't miss the old life, not even a little. He started calling him Buddy and then Aiden. And one morning, as he changed his diaper with one hand and sipped cold coffee with the other, Aiden giggled at him for the first time. A full belly laugh that filled the room. Carter laughed too, and cried, because it hit him in that moment. This wasn't temporary. He didn't want it to be. He wasn't raising his nephew. He was raising his son. And though no one had said it out loud yet, not Dean, not the mystery woman who had left the baby behind, Carter had decided. Whatever the past held, whatever secrets were hidden in that abandoned carrier, he would be Aiden's father. But secrets, like children, grow, and some truths don't stay buried forever. Chapter 2. Everyone has a story, but some stories are built on lies. 2 years passed. Aiden was now a vibrant, curious toddler, the kind who asked why every 5 seconds and insisted on wearing mismatched socks. His laughter was a permanent soundtrack in Carter's home. It echoed in the mornings when cartoons played on low volume as Carter packed lunches, and it lingered in the air long after bedtime, where Carter sat scrolling through pictures of their day. The pain of that strange night when Aiden first arrived had faded into a quiet corner of his mind. Carter no longer looked out the window expecting someone to show up and claim the boy. He had built a routine, a life, a rhythm that made it easy to forget that none of this had started by choice, but the questions, the ones he tried to bury, had not disappeared. They surfaced in small moments. At the pediatrician's office when they asked about the mother's medical history, at daycare when staff asked about custody paperwork, when someone pointed out that Aiden didn't quite look like him. Carter dismissed it. He had dark hair, Aiden's was sandy brown. So what? Genes are funny that way. He had his smile, didn't he? And his laugh, and the way he furrowed his brow when he concentrated. Just like Carter did when he was fixing the sink or trying to pay bills on time. They were family. That's what mattered. But in the back of his mind, a thought tugged like a thread coming, undone. What if there was more to the story? Then one quiet Tuesday evening, Carter got a call that stopped his world. Carter? The voice was cautious, fragile, and unmistakably familiar. Dean? Carter nearly dropped his phone. It had been over 2 years. 2 years of silence, 2 years of unanswered calls, vanished numbers, and dead ends. And now, out of nowhere, his brother was on the line, as if no time had passed. I heard you have Aiden. Carter's stomach turned. He was left on my doorstep, Dean, with a note. I know. You know? His voice rose. Where the hell have you been? You left your son behind, like he was nothing, like I was nothing. There was a long pause. He's not my son. Carter's mind went blank. What? I didn't want to say anything. I didn't know how, but he's not mine. I only found out after she left. The timelines didn't match. She had been with someone else. She was using me. I didn't know until the test came back. Carter sat down. The room was spinning. What test? She made me take a DNA test. I got the results right before she vanished. She didn't even tell me she was pregnant until months later. But when Aiden was born, she panicked. Said she couldn't do it. That I had to raise him. That it didn't matter whose blood. He needed someone. Carter felt like he was going to be sick. So you just left him with me? You always had a bigger heart, Carter. I wasn't ready. I thought you'd take care of him until she came back. But she never did. And I didn't have the guts to face it. Carter gripped the phone so tightly it hurt. Do you know who the father is? Dean hesitated. No. And I don't think she does either. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Dean added, I'm sorry. I messed everything up. Carter hung up without another word. That night, after Aiden fell asleep, Carter sat at the kitchen table, staring at the little boy's drawings on the fridge. Dinosaurs, stick figures, a scribbled house with their names under it, Aiden and Daddy, not Uncle Carter, not Dean, just Daddy. Carter had loved him as a son, raised him as one, but now he knew he wasn't even blood. And still, what difference did that make? But the crack was there now, a fracture in the foundation he had built so carefully. And in his heart, a new question emerged. One he couldn't shake. If Dean wasn't the father, then who was? Chapter 3. Blood might speak, but love raises the voice louder. The next few days felt different. Carter tried to pretend everything was fine. He still made breakfast in funny shapes, still packed Aiden's favorite snacks, still smiled. When his son ran into his arms at daycare pickup. But something inside him had shifted, something fundamental. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat on the couch long after the house had gone still, turning the words over in his mind. "He's not my son." They echoed in his chest like an accusation. Was he living a lie? Had all those moments, the first time Aiden said, "Dada," the nights he stayed up with him when he had a fever, the times he kissed skinned knees and dried tears, been false? No, they were real. He knew they were, but still, something in him needed to know the truth. If Dean wasn't Aiden's biological father, then who was? He dug through old boxes and drawers, searching for any remnants of that time. And there it was, the note that had come with Aiden, folded and stained but still legible. "Please take care of Aiden. He deserves better than what I can give him. Don't look for me." No name, no signature, just guilt scribbled in shaky handwriting. Carter couldn't stop himself. The next morning, he called in sick to work. He needed answers, not because he didn't love Aiden, but because every child deserved the truth about where they came from, even if it hurt. He drove to the county records office trying to find anything connected to Dean or his ex, Lana, the woman who had disappeared into thin air. Her full name, her last known address, a trail, however faint. It was slow, frustrating work. Dead ends, disconnected phone numbers, an old landlord who barely remembered her. But then finally a hit, a P.O. box registered in a nearby town. It wasn't much, but it was something. Carter wrote a letter. He didn't know if Lana still checked the box or if it even still existed, but he had to try. "Lana, I'm not writing to judge or to accuse. I just want to know the truth. Aiden is loved. He is safe. He is happy, but he deserves to know where he comes from. Please, if you have even a shred of love left for him, give him that. Carter." He mailed it and waited. Days passed. A week, 2, nothing. Then, one Saturday morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Just his name on the envelope in handwriting that matched the original note. His hands trembled as he opened it. "Carter, you're right. Aiden deserves more than silence. I don't know who his father is. I wish I did. There were a lot of mistakes. I was lost. Dean wasn't the only one. There was a man, a friend from work. He didn't even know I was pregnant. His name is Jacob. I don't know if he still lives in town. I never wanted to be a mother. I was drowning, and I knew I'd ruin him. But I always knew you were different, that you had a kind heart. Please forgive me, L. Jacob, a name. A crack of light in a long tunnel of doubt. Carter read the letter 3 times, each time his emotions more tangled than the last. He didn't know if he should be angry or grateful, maybe both. He folded the paper and placed it in a drawer with the other note. Then he looked over at the living room, where Aiden was curled up under a blanket, watching cartoons, a chocolate milk mustache on his upper lip. Carter sat beside him, pulled the boy into his lap, and hugged him. Whatever the DNA said, whatever the past revealed, that child was his, in every way that mattered. But now he had a name, Jacob. And Carter wasn't the kind of man to leave stones unturned, because even if the truth hurt, even if it was ugly, Aiden deserved to know it. Chapter 4. A stranger's name, a father's shadow. The name Jacob echoed through Carter's mind like a distant bell. Every time he looked at Aiden, he wondered, did he have Jacob's eyes, his smile? Was there something of the man in the boy Carter had raised since infancy? He didn't want it to matter, but it did. Carter wasn't chasing biology out of insecurity. He knew who Aiden called Dad every morning and who the boy clung to during thunderstorms. But he also knew this: identity was a puzzle, and Aiden deserved every piece. So Carter began digging again. He started with the basics: social media, people search sites, old work records from the company Lana had mentioned in her note. Eventually, after hours of frustration and digital dead ends, he found him, Jacob Moore. Age 39, used to work in logistics, now managed a mechanic shop in a nearby city called Crest Hill, about an hour's drive away. Carter sat in his car outside the shop for nearly half an hour before he worked up the nerve to go inside. Through the window, he could see a tall man in grease-stained overalls, talking and laughing with a coworker. He looked normal, not the ghost Carter had imagined, just a guy. When Carter finally stepped inside, Jacob glanced up. "Need help?" the man asked, wiping his hands on a rag. Carter's voice came out quieter than expected. "I'm not here for car trouble, I just need a minute of your time. My name's Carter Reynolds." Jacob furrowed his brow, suspicious but polite. "Okay." "It's about a woman you used to work with, Lana Whitaker, about 9 years ago." Jacob's expression shifted. Recognition, then unease. "I haven't seen Lana since she just up and vanished. Is she okay?" "I don't know," Carter replied honestly. "But I believe you might be the biological father of a little boy. His name is Aiden. He's 8. Jacob went pale. "Wait, what? That's not... Are you serious?" Carter nodded slowly and pulled the letter from his pocket, unfolding it with careful hands. "She mentioned your name in this. She said you didn't know." Jacob read the letter in stunned silence, jaw tightening. "I had no idea," he said, finally hoarse. "I swear to God, I didn't know." Carter believed him. They sat on the curb outside the shop, the sun dipping low behind them. Jacob lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "I was a different man back then," he said. "Drinking too much, drifting between jobs. Lana and I, it wasn't serious, just a few nights. I didn't even think..." He stopped. "I never thought something like that could have come out of it," Carter nodded. "I didn't come here to accuse you. Aiden's my son. No matter what biology says, but I think you have a right to know. And he might one day have questions. I want to be ready for that." Jacob was quiet for a long time. Then, "Can I meet him?" The question hit Carter like a punch. He'd known it might come, but he wasn't ready. "I don't know," he said truthfully. "He doesn't know any of this. He thinks I'm his dad, and I am." Jacob nodded, respect in his eyes. "Of course, I'm not trying to take anything from you, man, but if there's ever a moment where it makes sense, I'd want to meet him. Not to mess things up, just to be in his world. A little." Carter looked at the man. Rough edges, grease-streaked fingers, but something genuine in his tone. Maybe this man didn't even know what kind of father he could be, but at least he cared enough to want to try. "I'll think about it," Carter said. They shook hands. No promises. Just the silent acknowledgement that a door had been cracked open, and behind it, the complicated truth waited. That night, Carter tucked Aiden into bed like always. As he turned off the light, the boy's voice called softly, "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy? Do I look like you?" Carter's breath caught. He walked over, knelt by the bed, and smiled. "You look like someone I'm proud of. That's all that matters." Aiden grinned and closed his eyes. Outside, Carter sat alone in the living room, staring at the letter again. He had found the truth. But the truth wasn't always an answer. Sometimes it was just the beginning of new questions. Chapter 5. The Fragile Balance of Love and Truth. Carter awoke the next morning to the sound of birdsong and the soft hum of the coffee maker, but the peace in his house felt thinner than usual, like glass under pressure. The visit to Jacob haunted him, not because Jacob had done anything wrong, not anymore, but because now Carter was walking a tightrope he didn't know existed. Raising Aiden had always come with its own invisible challenges. There were the bedtime worries about coughs and bruises, the awkward school meetings, the field trip permission slips, and the spontaneous questions like, why do some moms and dads not live together? Or, how come my last name is Reynolds? All those moments had a subtext Carter avoided, a looming reality that biology might one day knock on the door. Well, it had. And now that Truth lived in a mechanic's shop an hour away, walking and talking and asking, gently, to meet the boy Carter had dedicated his life to. That morning, Carter dropped Aiden off at school like always. The boy was excited. It was class picture day. He wore the red plaid shirt Carter had bought for the EA occasion, hair combed messily but with care. Aiden waved goodbye from the school steps, and Carter's chest swelled with pride and dread in equal parts. He sat in the car long after the bell rang, thinking about everything that could go wrong. What if Jacob came back later and decided to pursue custody? What if Aiden grew up and resented Carter for hiding the truth? What if the truth unraveled everything they had built? That same afternoon, Carter drove to the cemetery. He hadn't been there in years. Lana's gravestone was simple, just her. Name, birth, and death dates, and a carved rose. She'd died too young, too suddenly, leaving behind a child and a storm of unanswered questions. He crouched beside the grave and spoke aloud. I found him. Jacob. He didn't know. He's not a bad guy. The wind whispered through the trees. I don't know what you'd want me to do, Lana. Maybe I never did. But Aiden's happy. He's safe. He's mine in every way that matters. Still, part of him came from someone else. I can't pretend that isn't important. He stayed there a while, thinking about the night Aiden had come to live with him. Just a baby in a carrier, barely a month old. Lana had shown up on his doorstep, pale, exhausted, and terrified. He's yours now, she had said, thrusting the child into Carter's arms. I can't do this. She had meant motherhood, responsibility, life. He'd asked who the father was, and she'd shaken her head. Doesn't matter. Maybe to her it hadn't. But to Aiden? To Carter? Now, it did. That evening back home, Carter tried to settle into routine. He cooked spaghetti, Aiden's favorite, and helped with homework, reading through a worksheet about planets while Aiden made silly jokes about Uranus. Dad, Aiden said at one point, pencil in hand, do you think I'm ever gonna be tall like you? You're already growing faster than I can keep up, Carter replied, ruffling the boy's hair. Aiden laughed. Yeah, but I want to be like you, you know? Brave, strong, not scared of spiders. Carter chuckled, though. His throat tightened. He was scared of something much worse than spiders now. Of losing this boy's unquestioning love, of breaking the unspoken trust they had both relied on for nearly a decade. He put Aiden to bed, then sat alone again in the living room, letter still folded on the coffee table. Next to it was a printed photograph of Aiden's school portrait from the year before. Toothy smile, buttoned shirt, bright eyes. He didn't know how to tell Aiden the truth, but he also knew he couldn't carry it alone forever. Later that night, he called Jacob. I've been thinking, Carter said after a long silence. Jacob's voice came through, tentative. Yeah? I'm not saying it'll be soon, and it has to be on my terms. But maybe someday you can meet him. As a friend. That's all. Jacob exhaled slowly. That would mean a lot. I won't screw it up, I promise. I'm not doing it for you, Carter said, voice steady. I'm doing it for him. He hung up before he could second-guess the decision. The truth had cracked the surface of their lives. Now it was up to Carter to decide how to shape the pieces into something that could hold weight. Love, identity, maybe even forgiveness. Because sometimes being a father wasn't about sharing blood. It was about standing in the storm when others ran. It was about choosing someone, again and again, even when the past came knocking with its unwelcome truths. And Carter had chosen Aiden. Now, he would choose him again. Chapter 6. The Shadows of Truth Begin to Move. The days that followed Carter's phone call to Jacob unfolded like a tightrope walk, one cautious step after another, with every motion carrying the weight of a future not yet spoken aloud. He told himself that it wasn't a promise, only a possibility. And possibilities could still be controlled or delayed. But the truth, once uncovered, had its own momentum. Carter went back to work, focusing on spreadsheets and marketing calls, like they mattered more than they did. His co-workers noticed a change. He was quieter, distracted, slow to laugh, but no one asked. In their eyes, Carter Reynolds was the steady single dad who never took days off, who brought cupcakes to staff birthdays and always left at 3:15 to pick up his son. Nothing about him screamed crisis, because Carter was good at appearing whole, even when something inside him was splintering. At home, Aiden remained his bright, innocent self, oblivious to the storm hovering over the life he knew. He built Lego castles on the floor, recited fun facts about Saturn's rings, and proudly handed Carter a spelling test with a big red 100% at the top. "I did it, Dad," he grinned. "You did," Carter said, hugging him tighter than usual, but each moment of joy now came with an aftertaste of fear. Aiden's every laugh reminded Carter that one day the boy might look him in the eyes and ask, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Carter began to research, quietly. Late at night when Aiden was asleep, he read parenting forums, articles from psychologists, even personal stories written by adults who'd found out they were adopted or raised by someone other than their biological parent. Some were angry, some were grateful, most were confused. One article hit him especially hard. "The worst betrayal isn't the lie, it's the delay." That night, Carter sat in the living room, photo albums spread around him, his laptop open. He clicked open a blank document and started typing. A letter. For Aiden. He didn't know when he'd give it to him, or even if he would. But the words poured out anyway, because the weight in Carter's chest needed release. "Dear Aiden, I've loved you since the first time I held you. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew I would do everything I could to protect you. There's something you don't know. Something I should have told you earlier. Your mother, Lana, left you with me when you were just a baby. She didn't say who your father was. For a long time, I didn't know either. But now His name is Jacob. He's your uncle. My brother. And he didn't know about you. He found out recently. He's not trying to take you away. I promise you that. But he's a part of your story. And I didn't want you to learn that from someone else someday and feel betrayed. I love you. Nothing changes that. You are my son in every way that matters." Carter stopped typing. His fingers trembled. He saved the file and shut the laptop. He wasn't ready to give the letter to Aiden, but writing it had helped. It had given form to the chaos. 3 days later, Jacob sent a message. "I'm still here. No pressure. Just thinking of you both." Carter didn't respond right away. Instead, he brought the message into therapy. He'd started seeing a counselor named Michelle, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who specialized in family trauma and parental transitions. At first, Carter was reluctant, but now he welcomed the hour as a sacred space, somewhere to unpack without judgment. "I feel like I'm betraying Aiden by not telling him," he admitted during their session. Michelle leaned forward. "Do you believe he's emotionally ready for the truth?" "I don't know," Carter whispered. "He's only 9. He still thinks Santa's real. He still cries when a Pixar movie ends too sadly. How can I drop this on him?" Michelle nodded slowly. "It's not about dropping a bomb. It's about planting seeds. Small truths, age-appropriate steps that build toward the full story. Children can handle hard things if they feel safe. That word again, safe. It had become Carter's obsession since Aiden was born. That weekend, Carter took Aiden hiking on the trails near Pine Valley Lake, a tradition they'd started years ago. It was their favorite place to escape, just the two of them. As they walked among pine needles and rustling trees, Carter decided to try a step, a seed. "Aiden," he said gently, "can I ask you something kind of serious?" "Uh-oh," Aiden teased. "Am I in trouble?" "No, buddy. Nothing like that. I just wanted to ask, do you ever wonder about your mom?" Aiden paused. His foot nudged a stone down the hill. "Sometimes," he said softly. "I mean, I know she died when I was a baby, but I don't really know what she was like." Carter took a deep breath. "She loved you. She was just going through a lot. She made mistakes, but she gave you to me because she wanted you to be safe." Aiden nodded, thoughtful. "You think she'd be proud of me?" "I know she would," Carter said, his voice thick. They walked a little farther. The air smelled like pine and lake water. Then Aiden asked the question Carter hadn't expected. "So soon? Did I ever meet my real dad?" Carter stopped walking. His heart thundered. "You've never met him," he said carefully. "But I do know who he is now. He didn't know about you either. And he's not a bad person." Aiden looked up. "What's his name?" Carter swallowed. "Jacob." Aiden's eyes widened. "Wait, like Uncle Jake?" Carter froze. He hadn't realized Jacob's name had even come up in passing. Aiden tilted his head. "I think I remember that name from a photo. Wasn't he your brother?" "He still is," Carter said. "He's my brother, which makes him your biological dad." Aiden didn't say anything for a long time. They kept walking, and Carter didn't press. He had said enough, for now. Later that night, after Aiden was asleep, Carter sat on the porch and watched the stars blink above the quiet street. He thought of Lana, of the promises he had made to her and to himself. He thought of Jacob, of how much had changed in just a few weeks. He knew the journey wasn't over, but for the first time, the path ahead didn't feel like a minefield. It felt like a road, one they could walk carefully, truthfully, together. Chapter 7. The Unspoken Bonds begin to fray. Carter woke up early the next morning with a hollow ache in his chest. Though he had finally shared part of the truth with Aiden, it didn't feel like a relief. Not entirely. It felt like opening. A door into a room filled with shadows, one that could no longer be shut. In the kitchen, he poured himself a cup of coffee and stared out the window, watching Aiden's bike lean against the fence, the morning sun casting sharp lines over the wooden planks. Every ordinary detail of their world now carried new weight. The truth was beginning to take up space, invisible but present in every silence, every pause, every question Aiden didn't quite know how to ask. When Aiden finally came down the stairs, he was quiet. No jokes, no breakfast chatter. He sat at the table, poking at his cereal, his eyes distant. Carter sat across from him, waiting. Finally, Aiden spoke. "So, does he want to meet me?" Carter had expected the question. "Jacob? He said he does, but only if you're comfortable." Aiden shrugged. "What if I'm not ready?" "Then he waits," Carter said firmly. "Nothing happens until you say it's okay. You're in charge of that." Aiden didn't reply right away. He pushed his cereal away. "I don't get it. Why didn't anyone tell me?" Carter sighed. "I was trying to protect you. Maybe I should have told you earlier. Maybe I messed that up." Aiden looked up at him then. "Are you still my dad?" The words hit Carter like a punch, but he nodded, eyes burning. "Yes. Nothing changes that. You're my son. Always." Aiden reached across the table and held his hand for a moment before getting up. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay." But as the day wore on, Carter could tell that things were shifting. Aiden wasn't acting out, but something inside him was unsettled. At school pickup, his teacher mentioned that he'd been unusually quiet, distracted. At home, he retreated into his room more often, headphones on, books closed. That evening, Carter made a decision. He texted Jacob.Carter. "He knows. I told him enough. He's thinking about meeting you." Jacob's reply came within minutes. "Jacob, thank you. Tell him there's no rush. I'm here when he's ready." Then Jacob. "Also, I wanted to ask, can we talk? Just you and me?" Carter hesitated. A meeting with Jacob, just the two of them, felt inevitable, maybe even necessary, but it also meant confronting things he hadn't dared to name. They agreed to meet at a small diner on the edge of town, a place they used to go as teenagers. Carter hadn't been back in years. Walking in felt like stepping into the past. Jacob was already there, seated at a booth, a coffee in front of him, his posture tight with nerves. When Carter sat down, there was a long silence. "You look tired," Jacob said. "I am," Carter replied. Jacob nodded. "I don't even know where to start." "Try the truth," Carter said, not unkindly. Jacob exhaled. "Okay. The truth is, when Lana and I hooked up, I wasn't thinking straight. I was angry with you. I was jealous of your life, your family, your stability. You always had it. Together. And I was spiraling." "You wanted to hurt me?" Carter asked. Jacob winced. "I wanted to feel like I mattered. Lana, she was broken too. We were two messes crashing into each other. I didn't love her. It was one night. And I didn't know about Aiden. Until recently." Jacob nodded. "Until recently. And I get it if you never forgive me, Carter. But I need you to understand. I never planned any of this, and I don't want to take your place in his life. I just want to know him." Carter studied his brother. There was no defiance in his voice, only sorrow and something else. Remorse that looked genuine. "He's scared," Carter said. "He doesn't know what this means for him." "I don't either," Jacob admitted. "I just want to show up, however he'll let me." Carter took a long sip of his coffee. "You're going to have to earn that. I know." They sat in silence again, the clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversation around them like background noise to a moment that could break either way. Then Carter said something he hadn't planned to say. "When Lana dropped Aiden off at my apartment, she didn't say a word about you. She just handed me the baby, cried for a few minutes, and left. I always told myself she trusted me more than she trusted herself." Jacob swallowed hard. "Maybe she did." "I raised him," Carter said quietly. "I woke up at 3 a.m. to feed him. I changed diapers. I taught him to tie his shoes, to read, to ride a bike. I sat through fevers and nightmares and school plays. I'm his father, Jacob. Not just on paper, in every way that matters." "I know," Jacob said, his voice rough. "And I will never take that from you." Carter leaned back in the booth, the tension in his shoulders slowly loosening. "You're going to have to follow his lead. He gets to decide what kind of relationship he wants." Jacob nodded. "I understand." They parted on uneasy but peaceful terms. Back at home, Carter found Aiden in his room, curled up with his sketch pad. "What are you drawing?" Carter asked gently. Aiden turned the page toward him. It was a pencil sketch of 3 stick figures, a boy in the middle holding hands with 2 taller figures. One was labeled Dad, the other simply Jake. Carter's chest tightened. "That's really good." Aiden shrugged. "I thought maybe I could meet him, but only with you there. I don't want it to be weird." Carter smiled, pulling him close. "It's not weird, it's just new, and we'll figure it out, together." And in that quiet moment, something softened in both of them. because the truth, as painful as it had been, was no longer the enemy. It had become the bridge, one step at a time. Chapter 8. When the Past Walks Through the Door. The following weekend arrived with a heaviness in the air that Carter couldn't shake. Though Aiden had said he wanted to meet Jacob, the boy had been unusually quiet since making that decision. He wasn't withdrawn exactly, just cautious, thoughtful in a way that made Carter nervous. Carter didn't push. He'd promised that Aiden would lead the way, and he meant it. But still, the idea of introducing him to Jacob stirred an uneasy cocktail of emotions. Pride, fear, grief, and something like jealousy, however reluctant. Jacob arrived a few minutes early to the coffee shop they'd agreed on. Carter saw him through the window as he parked, jeans, button-down shirt, hair combed back. He looked nervous, trying too hard to appear casual. His leg bounced under the table. His hands fidgeted with the coffee sleeve. Inside the car, Carter turned to Aiden. "We can leave at any time. There's no pressure." Aiden was gripping the strap of his backpack tightly. "I know. Let's just go in." The bell chimed as they stepped through the door. Jacob stood up instantly. His eyes locked on Aiden's face like he was memorizing every line. For a moment, no one said anything. Carter glanced down at Aiden, who was staring at Jacob as if he were looking at a photo come to life. Jacob broke the silence first. "Hi, Aiden. I'm Jacob." Aiden gave a slight nod, his voice unsure. "Hi." They sat down, Aiden next to Carter, Jacob across from them. There was an awkward silence, filled only by the soft clinking of mugs and the low hum of conversation around them. "I wasn't sure what kind of drink you'd like," Jacob said, "so I didn't order anything." Aiden blinked. "I like hot chocolate." Jacob smiled. "Me too." Carter got up to place the order, sensing they needed a moment alone. When he returned, Aiden was asking questions in a cautious but curious tone about Jacob's job, his car, whether he liked Marvel or DC. Jacob answered each one with patience, sometimes humor. Slowly, Aiden began to open up. "Do you have kids?" he asked suddenly. Jacob hesitated. "No, not yet." Aiden nodded, taking a sip of his cocoa. "Do you want them?" Jacob glanced at Carter, then back at Aiden. "Honestly, I never thought about it much. I was kind of a mess for a long time. I didn't think I'd be any good at being a dad." "But you're my real dad?" Aiden asked, his voice quiet, unsure of the word. Jacob looked at him, then at Carter again. "I'm your biological father. That's true. But the man who's been your real dad every day of your life? That's him," he said, nodding toward Carter. Carter felt his throat tighten. Aiden seemed to think about that. "Yeah, that's what I figured." There was another pause. Then Aiden said, "You kind of look like me." Jacob laughed softly. "I was thinking the same thing." The rest of the visit went better than Carter had expected. It was clumsy, emotional, but it wasn't a disaster. Aiden didn't say much after they left, but he didn't seem upset, just quiet, turning things over in his mind. Back at home, Carter asked gently, "How are you feeling?" Aiden shrugged. "Weird. Not bad. Just weird." "That makes sense." "He's not what I expected," Aiden said. "But he wasn't fake. He was just real." Carter nodded. "Yeah, he's real." That night, Carter lay awake longer than usual. The meeting had gone better than he could have hoped, but it also made something ache in him. The moment Jacob had looked at Aiden with that mixture of wonder and regret, it had reminded Carter of everything he'd had, and everything he could still lose. He wasn't naive. He knew relationships shifted. He'd raised Aiden, but biology had a gravity of its own. What if Aiden wanted more time with Jacob? What if, over time, the word dad became diluted? These were the questions that haunted him as the days unfolded. And then came the unexpected. 2 weeks after that first meeting, Aiden came home from school with a flyer in his backpack. It was for the annual father-son sports day, an afternoon of silly games, tug-of-war, and three-legged races. Aiden dropped it on the counter and said casually, "They said we can bring more than one person if we want." Carter looked at him. "Are you asking if Jacob should come too?" Aiden shrugged. "I guess, if that's okay." Carter's chest tightened. "Do you want him to?" "I think so," Aiden said. "He doesn't know anyone at school. It might be good." Carter nodded slowly. "Then he can come." He texted Jacob that night. "Carter, Father-Son Day at Aiden's school next weekend. He asked if you'd want to come too." Jacob, "Are you serious?" Carter, "Yeah. He said it might be good." Jacob, "Then I'll be there." The day arrived with bright skies and nervous anticipation. Aiden was buzzing with energy, and Jacob showed up in a t-shirt and sneakers, clearly trying to look like every other dad in the crowd. The three of them navigated the games together. They laughed during the egg and spoon race, collapsed in a heap during the three-legged dash, and ended up covered in dust after tug-of-war. But it was during a break, sitting on the bleachers with paper cups of lemonade, that Aiden surprised them both. "I'm glad you're both here," he said suddenly. "I don't know how to explain it. It's like having two halves of me in the same place." Carter blinked. Jacob looked stunned. And for the first time, the tension that had been simmering between them for weeks dissolved, if only for a moment. That night, after Aiden was asleep, Carter and Jacob sat on the porch. "He's something," Jacob said, staring up at the stars. "You did good." "I tried." Jacob sipped his beer. "I've missed a lot, I know I can't fix that. But I want to be around now. I want to do it right." Carter nodded. "Then do it. Be consistent. Be honest. And don't screw it up." Jacob smiled. "I won't." And sitting side by side, two men linked by blood and betrayal, fatherhood and forgiveness, they watched the night settle in, quietly, like the past finally starting to loosen its grip. Chapter 9. The Family. You choose. The days that followed the father-son event unfolded with a kind of delicate balance. Aiden seemed lighter, more at ease. The heaviness that had once settled over him like a fog began to lift. He was laughing more, asking more questions, not just about Jacob, but about family, heritage, even Carter's own childhood. It was as though the fractured pieces of his world had found new places to settle, not perfectly aligned, but functional. Carter tried to remain neutral whenever Jacob came up in conversation, though his inside still reacted with quiet tension. He was adjusting to the idea of sharing Aiden's world, of no longer being the sole parental figure. And while he didn't doubt Jacob's sincerity anymore, trust, for Carter, was still a guarded door. He had spent too many years cleaning up, the mess others left behind, to open it easily. One afternoon, Carter found Aiden in the garage, sorting through a box of old photos. It was one of the few things he hadn't purged during the chaos of Melanie's betrayal. "These are cool," Aiden said, holding up a picture of Carter from his college graduation. "You had hair," Carter laughed, pulling up a chair. "I had dreams too. Look where that got me." Aiden grinned, but his eyes moved to another photo. One of Melanie holding Aiden as a baby, Carter standing next to her, looking simultaneously proud and exhausted. "Do you ever miss her?" Aiden asked, not quite looking at him. Carter exhaled slowly. "Not her. I miss the version of her I thought I knew, but that version didn't really exist." Aiden nodded. "Jacob said she wasn't always kind to him, that they were both messed up back then." "She was a mess," Carter said honestly. "But I think deep down she loved you, even if she didn't know how to show it the right way." Aiden looked at the photo again, then slipped it back into the box. Sometimes I wish I didn't feel anything about her. It'd be easier. Feeling is harder, Carter said, but it means you're still human, still open. There was a long silence. Do you ever think about having other kids? Aiden asked suddenly. Carter blinked. No one's ever asked me that before. Well, Aiden said. I don't know, Carter admitted. After you came into my life, that kind of became a full-time thing. I never thought I had room for anything else. I wouldn't mind if you did, Aiden said, almost shyly. Just saying. The words landed deeper than Aiden could have known. Carter reached over and ruffled his hair. Let's get through. Your teenage years first, champ. One miracle at a time. Later that week, Carter got a call from Jacob. Not a text, a call. It had become a regular thing now. A check-in every few days. Especially when Aiden had something on his mind that neither of them could quite translate. Hey, Jacob said. You got a minute? Sure. What's up? I was thinking, with how things have been going, I'd like to start helping more. Financially, I mean. Carter was caught off guard. You don't need to do that. I know, but I want to. It's not just about child support or responsibility. I want to be a contributor in his life, a partner, if you'll let me. There was a silence. Carter's pride wrestled with practicality. Okay, Carter said at last. We'll figure something out. Thanks, Jacob said. Also, I've been thinking about therapy. For me, might help me work through some of the guilt. That's probably a good idea, Carter said. For what it's worth, I think it takes guts. Coming from you, that means a lot. That same night, as Carter sat on the porch with a beer in hand, Aiden joined him, his favorite hoodie half-zipped, his face slightly pink from the spring. Son, Jacob said he's going to therapy, Aiden said. Yeah, he mentioned it. I think that's cool. Me too. They sat quietly, the kind of silence that felt earned, not awkward. Hey, Aiden said suddenly. Remember when you said you weren't sure if you'd be any good at this? Carter smirked. Which time? When you found out you'd be raising me. Yeah, I remember. Aiden looked straight ahead. Well, I'm glad you didn't quit. Carter's chest swelled, his throat tightening in that now familiar way Aiden always seemed to bring out of him. Me too, he said softly. That night, as Carter turned off the porch light and locked the front door, he realized something profound. He had built a life out of chaos, and somehow, against every odd, it was holding together. It didn't matter that Jacob had re-entered the picture. It didn't matter that Melanie's betrayal had once threatened to unravel everything. What mattered was the boy upstairs, snoring, softly, who had chosen to love Carter not because of blood, but because of time, of presence, of heart. And in that quiet moment, Carter felt something he hadn't in a long time. Peace. Chapter 10, More Than Blood. Months passed, and the fragile arrangement between Carter, Aiden, and Jacob had started to settle into something resembling stability. There were still awkward moments, pauses during conversations where old wounds lingered just beneath the surface. But there was also growth. There was effort. There was love, in all its imperfect forms. One Saturday morning, Carter was sipping his coffee when Aiden burst into the kitchen with a flyer in his hand. They're doing a science fair at school, he said, eyes bright. I was thinking maybe I could do something with DNA, like how it works, and what it can't explain. Carter raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. I just thought it would be cool, Aiden said. You know, because of everything. Carter nodded slowly. That could be powerful. Just be ready for questions. I will be. I'm not ashamed, Aiden said. I used to be, but not anymore. That hit Carter harder than he expected. He put his coffee down, really looking at his nephew. his son in every way that mattered. There was a new strength in Aiden's posture, a maturity that hadn't been there before. "Then I think it's a great idea," Carter said, "and I'll help however I can." Over the following weeks, Aiden poured himself into the project. Jacob visited during one of the weekends to help him map out the double helix model, and Carter found himself surprised at how natural the collaboration looked, father and son bonding over science and conversation. But while Jacob brought knowledge, Carter brought presence. The late nights, the snacks, the pacing in the hallway when Aiden got frustrated and needed to vent. When the day of the science fair finally arrived, Aiden stood proudly in front of his trifold board. On it was a title written in thick black letters: DNA, what it can prove, and what it can't. Below, it was a paragraph that stopped Carter in his tracks. DNA proves where you come from, but not who shows up for you. My name is Aiden Walker. I was raised by my uncle after my mother left, and I recently learned that my biological father is someone I've only known briefly. But the man who made my lunches, taught me how to ride a bike, and stayed by my side through everything, that's the man I call Dad. DNA gave me a truth, but love gave me a life. Carter had to turn away, pretending to adjust his phone just to hide the tear that slipped down his face. Aiden didn't win the fair. His project was praised, but someone else took home the blue ribbon. Still, when the crowd thinned out and they walked toward the car, Aiden's smile never faded. "You did good, kid," Carter said, clapping his back. "I wasn't doing it to win," Aiden said. "I just wanted to say it out loud. I think I needed to." Back home, Carter found an envelope waiting in the mailbox, an official letter from a family services office. For a moment, he froze. When he opened it, he saw the confirmation of something he had quietly filed months ago. Adoption finalized. The papers were stamped, signed, legal. Carter stood in the driveway, sun setting behind him, reading those words over and over again. Aiden was no longer just his nephew under the law. He was now officially his son. That evening, after dinner, Carter handed the envelope to Aiden. The boy looked at it, confused, then opened it slowly. As he read, his eyes widened. "I didn't know you filed this," Aiden whispered. "I wanted to wait until the time was right," Carter said. "I wasn't sure what you'd want." Aiden looked up at him, emotion rising in his throat. "I want this. I want you." Carter pulled him into a tight hug, the kind they hadn't shared in years, the kind that didn't need words, the kind that healed. Later, as they sat watching a movie on the couch, just the two of them like always, Aiden leaned his head on Carter's shoulder. "Thanks for not giving up on me," he said. Carter's voice was rough but steady. "Never could. You saved me too, you know." Aiden looked up. "Really?" Carter nodded. "You gave me a reason to fight, to forgive, to build something better than what came before." As the credits rolled and the room dimmed into silence, Carter realized that while biology had once created a family torn apart by secrets, love had stitched together a new one, stronger, braver, and chosen. And that, he knew, was the kind of bond no DNA test could ever measure.